We learned that the Polk County Maroon community was referred to as Minatti, and it was located near Lake Hancock. We also discovered that Lake Hancock was near a museum that dedicates a portion of its exhibits to the Seminoles. So, logically, we had to stop there to see what they say about the African Revolution in Florida. Welcome to Polk County Historical Museum. Here we are. Now that we're at the museum, let's see what we can find about those Africans that fled Angola to what is now Polk County in the year 1821. Exhibition guide. What is this? See if they got any Seminole history here, or Black Seminole history. Oh, over here. I recognize that. Seminole dolls. Beaten leather medicine and tobacco bags. Seminole or Miccosukee shirt. Some recognition of Seminoles. However, you have African American settlements. Early black settlements in Polk County were established to house workers who came to the area for opportunities with the phosphate, turpine, railroad, or citrus industry. Segregation made it necessary for blacks to have separate living quarters, and many of these quarters expanded into thriving communities by the early 20th century. Below are some of the settlements in Polk County that grew into established communities. See, what this doesn't take into consideration is all of the different black settlements that were actually here, the Maroon communities that were here prior to the Civil War. See, they kind of have a tendency to separate the Indians from the Africans, right? Over here, they're talking about the Native American conflicts, the Seminole Wars, not emphasizing that they are too African Americans, all right? African Americans in early Polk County. Florida had long served as a destination. Oh, so they do mention it here. Florida had long served as a destination for runaway slaves, while little is known about the Polk County region prior to the 1830s. Military reports in 1832 identify the village of Minatti, which is Manatee, near Bartow. That's where we're going to go check out in a little bit, as having black settlers. Runaway slaves who joined Seminole communities also became known as black Seminoles. So this is where, when they left the Angola community by Sarasota, when that was destroyed in 1821, many of them actually came to this area that we're in right here in Bartow. In 1861, 31 families in Polk County possessed 143 slaves. Few accounts of slavery in the region, particularly from a slave's perspective, are available for interpretation. From what is known, it does not appear the experience matched that of plantation slavery across the South. Yeah, so this little section we have right here is the extent of which there's black record of an existence in this area prior to the Civil War. But I guess, how can you fault the people? Can you fault the historians for not knowing about this? Not really, because, like I said before, the essence of their existence was contingent upon not being detected. But as archaeologists and researchers are starting to actually do more discoveries, they're starting to find out that the extent at which black communities actually did live here and find freedom by fighting against the U.S. government since the 18th century all the way into the 19th century. But it seems as though this museum, like many others, make a distinction between the history of the Seminole Wars and what the contemporary generals referred to as the Negro Wars.
Okay, it's all over.
Yeah, you have the first Seminole War in North Florida, and the second Seminole War, which was closer to Central Florida. And you have President Zachary Taylor instructs the military to remove all Native Americans from Central Florida. See, there's no mention there of the Africans that were actually asked to be removed as well. They're actually pushing to remove them for a very long time. No mention of this in the Indian section. And so all of this, still, no mention. There are really not that many blacks here at this time during the Third Seminole War. They've all been moved. When you read down all this section here, you really don't see any mention of this connection between African Americans, Seminoles, fighting for liberation. Talk about remaining Indians, Miccosukee. They say Seminoles, but they put it in the Indian section separate from everything else. So this is why there's this misconception that these blacks didn't fight for their freedom, because they're always often portrayed as being something separate from, red Seminoles. Well, we at least saw Minatti acknowledged in the museum. Let's go to Lake Hancock and see if there is any recognition of the Maroon community there. As we were driving down the road looking for Lake Hancock, and what the maps described as the location where the Minatti Maroon community would have been, we realized that the road came to a dead end. However, we were fortunate enough to meet Ryan King, whose family owns the farmland in the exact location that the Maroon community existed.
Oh, that's why they call it Peace River.
That's correct. It used to be called Peace River.
Can we record you? Because we're actually doing a film.
For history. For history. No, that was perfect, man. We were doing a historical thing.
I'm a history teacher, and I don't know someone like
That's crazy, man. We ran into the perfect guy. That's amazing.
But that's how Peace River got named. They could not pronounce Peace Creek. Wow. We had a huge plantation here on this side of the lake. And it's just really cool stuff happened here a long time ago.
So what I was reading, and I'm doing a study on the red Seminole and the black Seminole.
He was a black Seminole.
So opponent was a black
Yes,
Seminole.
sir, that's exactly right.
So I wasn't sure which one he was, but I read that after Andrew Jackson sent the red sticks into
Down here, pushed them all the way down to Charlotte, and he pushed them farther again.
Yeah, so he was in. So we're gonna go to Sarasota to visit the old Angola, and then he pushed them all over here to the lake out right there. This is it right here.
This is it. This is the spot.
The spot.
If you want, I'll come take you and show you the hill.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's got a burn pile on it right now, but I can show you a spot where the hill is.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
the
yeah,
highest point of elevation on this side of the lake. It just happens to be on our family's property.
So you know all this history.
My dad knows way more than
Yeah.
I do. I haven't had time or the, intuition to look into it.
Yeah.
I'm more of a farm guy, getting this stuff done, getting grown, but he knows a lot more about it than I do. I know bits and parts and pieces and can kind of put the story together to some degree, but he can tell you a lot more. Yeah.
So you want to grab your, can we fly the drone?
You say you
can drive?
We can drive, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to.
I'd love to.
I'll back up, just follow this road in. You'll come up to a couple of barns, just park right there. I'll dust you out.
Okay.
You follow me, and it's real dusty right now.
Okay.
I'll back up.
Thanks.
Turn left, then prepare to park your car. You will need to walk to your destination from there.
I'm gonna about it. Hey, I suddenly got the feeling that we're about to get Texas Chainsaw. I know, right? We are now at Apone Farms, named after Chief Apone, one of the Seminoles. And this is where the Black Seminoles escaped to in 1821. So this is the location that the Black Seminoles, after they left the Sarasota region in the community of Angola near Tampa Bay in 1821, when Andrew Jackson sent troops and Red Creek Native Americans to this region. Or sorry, when he actually sent Creek Native Americans as well as some U.S. soldiers to this region to scatter the Black Seminoles from this area. Many of those Black Seminoles who were actually trading with people, with Cubans and other fishermen on the coast, were pushed into the interior. This is the interior that they actually went to. This location here, they established new settlements known as Minatti, or also known as Manatee. This whole entire region, we are on the location exactly where the Black Seminoles lived, where the Maroon communities were pushed to after they left Angola. Our friend Ryan King was so gracious enough to let us on his property, 80 acres of land, to actually get access to the lake, where you see a lot of the Seminoles, a lot of the Maroons would usually find areas near water to live so they can fish and so they can hunt and do all kinds of things and still live freely.
According to history, this is the highest point of elevation on this side of Lake Hancock, and this is where Chief Apone's homestead was. He had a 2-story log home here, and he farmed squash, zucchini, peas, peaches, and the list goes on of different commodities that were grown here. He also had 300 to 400 slaves that lived on the north end of the lake on Saddle Creek. Back in that direction, they came back, and they're the people that cultivated his crops for him. You know,
Wow.
the Peace River was actually called Pease River, but the white man could not pronounce peas, so that's how it's got its name, Peace River. That's the gist of that.
Interesting.
This is some of, I don't know, it's just God's country, untouched Lake Hancock. There's no homes that are on the lake. It's a natural in its state, one of the last lakes, I believe, in the state to be like this in its own natural form.
And this out here, this is like pristine beauty. Like if you guys are actually out here and you can feel like the breeze off the lake, you can hear the birds out here. We see peacocks, we see bald eagles and everything like that. Like this is like pure beauty out here. But this is the location that Chief Apone actually lived right here. So we actually got like the inside scoop here from Mr. King. These slaves that King speaks of would have been former slaves at this point. I was pleased to find out that the King family knew about this history. The U.S. Army tried their best to keep the Africans and the natives from trading on the coast. In addition to Minatti's population growing after the destruction of Angola, there were other significant Maroon communities that were also thriving in the 1820s and 30s.